Hi, everyone. I'm Siobhan Harris, founder and CEO of ThriveIN, and I'm excited for this conversation today. We have Dr. Tega Edwin. She is a career counselor, coach, and the founder of Her Career Doctor. And she is here to give just some amazing gems around how not only to negotiate your pay, but how to really negotiate the career of your dreams. And what does that really mean for a lot of you watching? And so I'm excited. So, Dr. Edwin, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Siobhan.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So, I would love to start with just your journey, Dr. Evelyn, because you really have an amazing journey of how you made the transition from working in healthcare to becoming a school counselor, and now as the creator of the Her Career Doctor brand. And so, can you just share? And there were some amazing pivots, and I'm sure there were some key strategies and steps that you did within that, or even looking back, you may have done differently. And so, can you just share with us briefly your journey to how you got here?
Yeah, for sure. My journey started, like you said, healthcare research. I was doing research for like a psychological research team I was in this tiny little office entering data, absolutely miserable, did not like it. And when I realized that it was not for me, I had no idea what would be for me. One thing I actually don't think I've ever said was on that journey, my plan was to be a medical doctor. That was my
Really?
journey.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to go. And I started with this research role. And didn't like the research. And I was like, I'm not gonna like medicine either. Like I just knew in my spirit it's not gonna be for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what else I would do instead. I knew I was miserable. I knew that I wasn't created to be miserable. So I was like, okay, if I'm unhappy, but I wasn't created to be unhappy, something's got to give. But what else am I gonna do? Like I don't know what else is out there. I actually took a year off from work and just took a step back because I knew that if I was going to find work that was truly aligned with who I was, or rather, if I was going to find work that I enjoyed, it would have to be aligned to who I was.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to find aligned work if I know who I am? So the goal really was to figure out, okay, who am I? Because I knew that that would be the foundation of finding aligned work. And so I did that work, really was getting clear about what I enjoyed, figuring out what brought me joy, what skills I liked using. It's like a whole thing, which we'll get into later. And I realized from that journey that counseling was a fit because I just had this real interest. Back then, I had a real interest in working with kids, in supporting kids, in just being around them. So that's how I got into counseling. That felt like a fix. I didn't want to be so many ironies because I didn't want to be a teacher. I was like, I don't want to be in front of a classroom all day long telling them what to do, but I want to work with them. So I'll be a school counselor. Irony of ironies, I'm a professor right now. So jokes on me. um, but so I loved working as a counselor. And it was during that time that I discovered career development because I was in my fourth and fifth, really my K-12, K-5 students leverage, understand careers, but more so my fourth and fifth grader being intentional with them. And so I decided to go get my PhD because I thought that I wanted to support school counselors more. And in my head, getting that training would help that process. So I went to get my PhD. And during that time, I started researching career development in K-12 schools because I enjoyed it so much. And while I was working, I found a role as a mental health counselor and then as a career counselor. And working as a career counselor with an agency was where like the light just came fully on, right? Like I enjoyed all those roles, but career was where it was like, oh man, I love this. I love this work with clients, seeing the light come on for them, seeing the joy that it brought them to figure their careers out. It was like, yes, this is what I enjoy. And so I kept doing research and went into a faculty role. And then I missed it. You know, I did faculty for one semester and I was like, I love teaching, but I miss working with clients.
Mhm.
And so I decided that I was going to start my own business as well as continue my faculty role. And I knew it would be in career counseling and coaching. And I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to start my own thing, who do I want to work with? Because I've done the agency thing where back then I worked with anybody who came in. And so it's like, who am I going to work with? I was like, well, you know what? Women. Women are who I really want to advocate for. Women are often disenfranchised in their careers, often making decisions based on other people. Just I feel like there's a lot of gaps around women's career development. And so that's how Her Career Doctor was born.
That is beautiful. And it's so funny when you look back at, I feel like I'm going to church. When you look back over your life and you speak of
Praise him.
in the midst of it, it can be so stressful. But once you're there, it's like, okay, I see what you did. God, universe,
Oh,
life,
yeah.
wherever you go to. It's like, yeah. And I have to asterisk myself because I'm pretty sure I mispronounced your name. And we talked about it before we hit record, but I'm very big on Black women's names and being correct with them. But Dr. Tega, Dr. Tega,
Yes.
Edwin. So I wanted to correct myself. So next question. So staying on the topic of career pivots, how would someone know even when it's time to make a major switch in their career? Is there ideal time? Is there an amount of money you should have saved or other structural pieces, before you switch careers? Because some people it's you have a day and it's like, I gotta go. It's pent up for many of days. And some people, when I left my job, I was part of that great resignation. I was a lot more strategic in having certain things in place and money saved and jobs lined up. But is there ever a right time? And how do you even, what does that even look like, making a career pivot?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a right time for each person. There's not a universal right time, but there's a right time for each person. In my signature program, I talked to I have a transition framework called the triage career transition. So to your point, I think money is a big one. Part of the career transition process has to involve auditing your finances, because if finances aren't in order, you find that you get desperate and you end up in other crappy situations, which is just why I'm big on build wealth in general. I mean, that's not my space, but I like to refer people. I'm like, everybody should just have their money right, because when your money's right, gives you a lot of power in your career, and you get to make decisions from a place of power and confidence, as opposed to at the whim of the company. But when your physical and mental health are starting to be impacted, I always say forget the money at that point. Like if the job has started to kill you, it's time to go. We'll figure out later. Just get out. But if you can stand to be there for another 6 months, if you can stand to be there, I would say it's better to be intentional about planning your exit, and that includes getting what I call a financial safety net, because you want that to then give you a runway to make your transition. When is it time to go? When your physical and mental health are being impacted, when you see that you're not growing anymore, there are no opportunities to grow, when you dread work every day, when literally it's like wake up and every day you're like, why am I here? When the only good thing about it is the money. Literally the only thing you're looking forward to is payday. And once payday goes, like that small euphoria disappears too. Yeah. It's like, it's not even worth it at the point. Those are some signs I would say that it's time to go, and then creating a plan and being strategic about your exit, I think will help you end up in a better situation as opposed to being in a cycle of bad jobs.
Yeah, because it is not fun to give 8 hours plus a day to somewhere that you are not passionate, or at least enjoy at minimum, because all of our jobs may not align with our passions. But okay, follow-up question to that, because for many people, a career change is a lot bigger than a job. It is a major leap of faith. For me, when I left my job in 2020, it was a whole, faith-based movement within myself to get the confidence to do it. And so what is your advice or your counsel to people who sometimes, they can have all of those checks and balance, but it's simply their fear that paralyzes them and, convinces them to stay in a job too long and really can prevent them from living the life of their dreams and fulfilling a purpose? How do you get over that uncertainty, that impostor syndrome, and all of just those feelings that come with possible change?
You don't get over it. You just do it. Those feelings are not going anywhere. Fear is perfectly, I talk about this in my program, literally the very first week we're talking about mindset, because once you tell yourself that you're ready to make the transition, literally all your automatic negative thoughts and the ants just become loud in your head. Who do you think you are? You don't have the skills. That other job is going to be just as bad. They won't pay you well. Everything starts coming up, and it's because you're about to do something you've never done before. So the fear is absolutely normal, and I want more women to change their relationship with fear, because fear is an emotion, just like happiness, joy, sadness. The difference is when you start making decisions based on your fear. Now you've moved from fear to being afraid, right? You can feel the fear and then you can acknowledge it and say, oh, I see what you're doing, but I'm going to set you aside and keep going anyway. That's how we need to handle fear. And so if you know that it's going to show up no matter what, then you just work through it. You don't try to get over it. You just push through it and keep going. I remember I said this literally just 2 days ago on Instagram. I was in my stories. I was saying, if you're waiting to be sure of your decision, if you're waiting to be certain, if you're waiting to not feel fear, then just accept that you're never going to do it. Because that moment is never going to come. So you just do it anyway.
I mean, where were you in 2020 when I
I was here, girl. I was here.
When I sent in my little resignation letter. Girl, it was a whole thing. So right now, there are many conversations happening around toxic work cultures and people who are leaving the workplace because of it. And again, we have this whole shift called the Great Resignation. And for Black women, what a lot of the studies are finding is what we already know is that a lot of work cultures are not safe spaces and places of career advancement for Black women. But what I've also found is that there are a lot of people who the work culture itself may not be toxic, but you may have a boss or a leader who is toxic and is a barrier to your success. What is your advice when we're talking about designing the career of your dreams of how do you navigate a toxic leader, but you may not want to completely remove yourself from that work culture? It's just that one little bird or hater like on your shoulder and won't let you be
I
great.
mean, if it's that one little bird and it's your manager, you might want to go anyway. And I'm
Yeah.
saying this because what the research shows is
Yeah.
70% of job changes, people are leaving their managers, not their jobs. You
Mm.
can love the work,
Yep.
but I have a feeling there's a high chance you can find that work in a better culture somewhere else
Mm.
because managers are so pivotal to our experiences at
Mhm.
work. But now that being said, you can manage your manager. I think I have it here. There's a book that I would recommend. I believe it's called Managing Up. Because I do a training on this with organizations, and I just want to look it up so I can let the audience know the name of the book. And I recommend just reading that because what it does is it walks you through different types. Yep. So it's called Managing Up, and the author is Mary Abbajay, Abbajay.
Okay.
And my training is really based on that book. So just grab the book and read it. It walks you through the different types of managers and how to navigate them. And so I would say you could start from there. You could start by managing your manager because there's ways you can have that interaction to where it makes your work roll better. And at the same time, I don't think that's a long-term strategy. I think that's a short-term strategy. I'm going to manage my manager for the next year, but also within that year, I'm being strategic about shoring up my skill set and my resume to go somewhere else. That would be what I'd be looking at. But that can only go so far. Ultimately, the onus is on companies to change their culture and to train their leaders better. That's where the problem lies. And so I want to be intentional about saying that, where the onus shouldn't be on you as the Black woman, if you're not the leader, to navigate your manager. We need to have better managers in the workplace. But until that happens, yeah, I'd say you can manage up. And while you're doing that, plan your exit.
Yeah. Because that you got to have the tolerance to do it. If you're gonna do it, and it's not for everybody to manage the manager with a big check. So let's talk negotiations, and I love hearing different women's takes on pay negotiation because whether you are a business owner or entrepreneur, full-time job, part-time job, negotiations are never fun, but we know that they have to happen. Can you break down for us in the simplest steps possible? What is your approach and advice on pay negotiation, particularly for Black women? And what are some of the common mistakes that you see Black women make when it comes to negotiating our pay?
Well, the most common mistake is not negotiating.
Mm.
That's just point blank. That's the most common,
Yeah.
is you just accept the first offer, which is not acceptable. Negotiation is not optional. You always negotiate, no matter how much, even if they say a number and inside you're like, oh God, what's happening here? You still negotiate that super high pay because most companies don't come in with their highest pay. So just always assume they're lowballing you. It's a safe assumption, not always, but just assume they're lowballing you. So you always ask for more. So that's step one, is you're negotiating. This is going to sound weird, but I want you to put your race out of your head because we live in a society that tells us a lot about a Black woman's worth in the workplace. There's a lot of messages around not being worthy, not having value, of you doing just work, and not getting paid. And so what I see happen is if you go in with the lens that you are a Black woman, it can block how you approach it and what you ask for, because you're assuming, oh, they're going to see me as less than. They're not going to accept it. They're going to see me as aggressive. So let me tone myself down. Okay. So they might not. They might definitely they might see your race head on. That's on them. But I think that you definitely should get out for the conversation because it changes how you show up. Unless you are, and not every Black woman has reached that place. Unless you're in the place where you're like, I don't want to be the safe Black woman. I'm here to shake things up. I'm going to say what I got to say. If you're in that space, then sure. But I know for most people, they're really trying to balance out how people perceive them as a Black woman, that then they're bringing themselves down, they're being timid, they're asking for less because they don't want to they don't want to be labeled the
Yep.
angry Black woman, the aggressive Black woman, the mean, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I want you to, just for this conversation, set your race aside and just think of your skills. Just get objective about your value add to the organization. What have you done in the past? What do you know you can do for this organization? What is your skill set worth? Not you, because nobody can pay your worth. What is your skill set worth?
Mhm.
And if you've done your research and you see how other people are paying for this skill set, then that's what you're negotiating based off of. If you know the value that you can add, you're having those conversations of, here's the value I've added in the past, here's what I know I can bring to the table. And so here's what, and so I would like more.
Mhm.
Notice I didn't say an amount, because the other thing is, you don't, my approach is, you never say your money first.
Really?
Whoever, yeah, once your money's on the table, you've lost the power,
Mhm.
in my opinion. You're trying to get their number first. What is their number?
Yep.
And some places will push, like they'll really push, like, I want to know your amount. And if they do, then what I say is, you give a range. You never give one number. And when you give a range, so to give like another tip, before you even start the conversation, you need to know what I call your walk away number. So the amount that if they come $1 less than this, you're walking away no matter what. So if my walk away number is 200K, when I come to the table and this recruiter or this hiring manager is being really pushy, they're like, no, tell us your number. Then I'm going to say, okay, I was looking for something between 210 and 250K. Notice where 200 falls in that range.
Mhm.
It's not even in there.
Yep.
Right. So that's how it's like, I'll give a range, but the number that I really want is not going to be in that range. Or if you're really feeling nervous, it's the very first number between 200 and 30K. But that's risky, because what if they then give you 200? Now you got your exact walk away number and you're going to be a bit bitter about it.
Mhm.
So that's usually what I say is, always ask for their number first. You know, I'd like to know what you are trying to compensate someone commensurate with this role and with the responsibilities you're expecting the person you hire to take on. Just try to get their number and then go from there, because more often than not, you probably think you're less skilled than you are. And so you're very likely to lowball your own self if you say number first.
Yep.
Those are some things I would drop. Just, I don't know if I said like an exact strategy, but just some thoughts off the top.
No, you laid them out. You laid them out, and it's very helpful, because it's so funny. You know, I've read and done all the things around negotiations, and I've even found myself, when it's time to have those conversations, I'm like, well, maybe my language gets more passive, and I'm like, well, if you can, I'm like, no. I'm like, this is the
say the thing.
Exactly.
Say the thing.
Exactly. Is there ever a right time to ask for a raise or to negotiate? Is it end of the year? Is it, oh, I've just had a major work win? Is there an ideal time, or
So this is specifically for a raise, right? Not for a new job offer and job search.
Yeah, for a raise. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say a raise before your evaluation, first of all. If you're waiting until evaluation time, it's too late. Generally, my approach is, I would say you want to be scheduling conversations with your manager every quarter at the very least, and you're taking the lead in those. And so if you're doing it every quarter, I would say company policy is different, right? Like I know, for example, my sister works with a company where they're very clear on how bonuses work. So you're not negotiating anything. But if like they're outside of their time, but if you're not in a company that does that, yeah, after a big win, after 6 months, usually is fair. I mean, inflation's going up, so keep an eye on the economy and keep an eye on your bills. But the point though is when you are approaching that conversation, it's never an emotional conversation. You can't ask for more money because you want more money. They don't care about you. You ask for more money because your skill set has increased. You have helped the company in some way, shape, or form, value add. You've saved money, you've increased revenue, you've decreased costs, you've increased client retention, you've increased client recruitment, whatever it may be. You have actual data that is relevant to your company's KPIs that you can speak to how you've directly impacted those KPIs. When I say direct, something one will always do is maybe if they've led a team, they say, well, it was my team that did that, so I can't claim it. Well, sis, you are leading the team. Yes, you can claim it. A different leader might not have led to those results with the same team. And so you can give credence to your team. At the same time, you need to big up your skill as a leader. And so I would say, yeah, if you've noticed that there's been a track record or of you accomplishing a lot, time to negotiate. If you notice that your job responsibilities have increased beyond what you were hired for. I can't tell you how many women I work with where they tell me that when they were fired or when they left their job, they hired 2 to 3 people to do their same job. And so it's like, but you were still getting paid. One person's like, nah. So when you notice scope creep. So I think of when contractors go and they talk about scope creep happens in our work too, where when they start to give you more, they're adding more to your plate, but you're not getting the title increase or the pay increase. It's time for something to change.
And I have been there, and the naive and the younger person in me thought that was the badge of honor. Oh, I'm now getting more work. And it's like at the same
No.
cost. I'm like, little did I know.
I remember I worked with a woman recently who, for her, it was she wanted to be seen as a team player. And so she kept saying yes. And I'm like, no. I say, the example I think of LeBron, right? LeBron is a good team player. And at the same time, he has a team. I mean, the Lakers so this time, but ideally, for any basketball player, right? The team members have to do their part to make you a great team player. And so if you're burnt out, if you're doing all the work, you can no longer be a good team player. Like you can't show up as a good team player if you're not showing up in excellence. So the company, the environment has a role to play in you showing up as your best.
Yep, I love that. So when asking to be paid what you're worth, and this was one of the things that
you can't be paid what you're worth. You could be paid a value aligned salary.
Say that one more time.
You can't be paid what you're worth. So what I always, because that's the language that we use a lot in this career space. I'm a child of God. Can't nobody pay what I'm worth. I'm worth the life of Jesus. He died for me. Who's saying that? Nobody. And I think that language, because language is powerful.
It is.
Okay. And so I think if you're thinking, oh, pay me what I'm worth, girl, are you worth $200,000? No. But what they can do is they can pay you a value aligned salary, which means they can pay you a salary that is aligned with the value that you bring to the table. And so I'm always big on catching that language, especially for women, because we live in a society that tells us that we're not worth very much. So if you try to get paid what you're worth and you've internalized society's messages that you're not worth much, you're not going to ask for much.
Yep. Well, and it's such a good point, because that, I think, for me and a lot of women is sometimes too where our hesitation and trepidation comes in those conversations, because you start to think, am I worth the 200K? Knowing that your skill set likely is probably worth 300K, but you're operating off of emotion and not fact, like you were saying. And going back to that, because when we're talking about, salary negotiations and raises, a lot of it all ties back to confidence. I have worked with people who got paid very big dollars and they weren't that smart. Michelle Obama been in the rooms.
There are many.
There, y'all. And a lot of times it is that fake it till you make it. But for those who are watching, how can you what is your best advice to really begin to gain the confidence to know that you deserve to be compensated properly for the value, your perspective, for your skills that you're bringing to the table? Because I see a lot of talented women, and I was one of them, who we go in with our head down, unsure. We will outwork everyone. But when it's time to actually sell ourselves and be compensated for it, we subconsciously, shrink a little bit. And so what is your advice to women for that? To even
catch the stories. Yeah, catch the stories you're telling yourself. So the stories you're telling yourself are your beliefs. And like when you said, am I even worth the 200K? That's a story. And a lot of us go through life without ever thinking about what we're thinking. We don't think about our thoughts, our self messages. We don't think about the beliefs that stop us from taking action or causes us to take action. So catch your stories and replace them. So I talk about any story that you're telling yourself, any belief that you hold that is keeping you from your goals is a limiting belief. And so the key is to catch those limiting career beliefs and replace them with liberating career beliefs. That's exactly why you can actually see them back there. I created my career affirmation cards, because the stories you tell yourself about your career, about who you are in the world of work, about the kind of professional you are, it shows up in how you show up. I remember telling people my most recent job search was my best ever. And it's because I went through it saying, y'all want me. Like I'm hot potato. Like I know y'all want me. And I went into every interview like that. I didn't know how this would go, but just that small change. Like once you just tell yourself, I have that 300K skill set. Here's what I've done for a company. Here's how I've increased sale year over year. Here's what I've accomplished. Like once you just tell, like literally say just sit down objectively and just write out what you accomplished. Like look at it objectively. And when you see it, just stop and say, I did that. And you have to, and it's not a one and done, because you've been telling yourself these limiting beliefs for so long that you have to intentionally tell yourself the liberating beliefs over and over. It doesn't happen by magic. It's an intentional process of thought replacement until you retrain your brain to believe that you are indeed all that.
And I would also say to those of you watching, get people to hype you up. You know, a lot of times for me, they are objective, but they see your hustle, they see your wins a lot of times better than you can. And
Mhm.
I have a crew that is unmatched, and they would say, "No, you deserve that and more." Or, do you remember back in Q1, you led this by yourself? And I'm like, "Dang, you're right. Let me put that on my notes when I speak to my leader." And so, yeah, surround yourself with women and people and champions who can also call out those things if you're unable to see it, for whatever reason, until you can
Mhm.
see it for yourself. Other question for you, Dr. Edwin. Are there things, in designing the career of our dreams, money, of course, is very important. Are there other things that we should be asking our employers for when we go in to talk about pay and job negotiations? Whether it's days off or hybrid schedule, but can you talk a little bit around some of those more kind of soft assets that still can help create a balanced and a healthy and happy work life for us?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, honestly, anything that adds money to your pocket indirectly. Because I think a lot of times people hear compensation and think
Mhm.
salary, but
Yep.
the salary is just a part of the compensation. Like, I remember recently, I worked with one client, and the big thing that finally told her on the job was subsidized daycare, where she's like, if I was paying it myself, this is how much I would be paying. And so I'm like, well, that's now money back in your pocket because the company will pay for some of that. So
Mhm.
it's like you mentioned, whether it's if you're someone who's I should back up and say it all depends on your values.
Yeah.
So clarifying your non-negotiable values, because what is important to you will determine what you want from the
Mhm.
company.
Yep.
So where I was going with, if you're someone who really values training and developing your skill set and you know you commit to it a lot, maybe it's asking for a professional development budget. It might be the paid days off because maybe you want to travel and flexibility.
Mhm.
If you're commuting, maybe they're paying for parking or they have a commuting budget. There's so many things that can come in play that it's hard to just give us a clear list. I mean, I give a list of things to explore in my job search program, but ultimately, it's what is important to you. If you
Mhm.
know your values, if you know where you spend the most money, where you spend the most time, and then you're thinking, how can my company cover these costs? Because that will indirectly put money back in your pocket.
Yep, love that, love that. Okay, so in these last couple minutes, there's one question I've really been wanting you to expand upon. One of the things I came across that you said was that we have to stop trying to find our passion. And when I read that, I was like, this is low key a revolutionary statement because it just really changed the whole way that I thought around passion. Because sometimes we're just chasing it, hoping that we're going to run into it. But can you expand upon that idea of don't chase or don't look to find your passion?
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, because society says find your passion so often and so easily. But what I realized, if you look up the word passion, passion is an intense interest or intense desire in something, right? So that I remember the definition, like intense interest in something.
Mhm.
And so, passion, just from that definition, passion does not come out of thin air. It comes out of something. And so,
Mhm.
what I say is, passion really is interest to the exponential. Your interests become passion. Too many of us are trying to find passion, like you said. And so we're looking for that. When I find my passion, I'll find work that I love. But it's like, God ain't just going to drop passion in your lap, sis.
Uh-huh.
No, no, no. So the analogy I love using is I think of like a farmer. Your seeds are the interests, and we all have many interests, right? Like
Mhm.
it might be whether it's education, but also maybe you have an interest in plants or
Mhm.
in fashion or in puzzles, right? Like we have many interests. And so as you think of those interests, when you realize the ones, there one or more interests that genuinely overlap with your values and would make sense for career, because these are the core ingredients to fulfilling work, then you plant those interests. And think of a farmer when he plants the seed or they plant the seed, they water it, right? They weed it, they make sure it gets enough sunshine. And what we notice is for the first few, depending on the plant, really week or months, nothing happens. You just think nothing's happening, but the farmer keeps coming back. And nothing's happening on the surface because something's happening down. The
Mhm.
plant needs roots before it can grow a seed or a tree. And so that's what happens with your interests. When you find those interests that align, your watering is you're taking classes on it. You find a job that aligns with it. So the more you do that work, the more you like the topic, you're like, yeah, I love this. This is fun. I'm enjoying it. That's your watering. And as you might not know, but you're going deeper and deeper into that skill set, into that topic. You're reading about it, you're watching YouTube videos, TED Talks, going to conferences, networking with people. That's you going deeper. And one day that seed, that plant, you'll see it bloom. And when it blooms, that's when passion is showing up.
Mhm.
Like one day you will look up and it's like, I really, really love this thing. That's
Mhm.
passion. And you can't just really, really love something out of thin air. It comes out of working at it. And the deeper you go, the more you love it. And one day your passion shows up. So, passion is the tree, is the fruit that grows out of the seed that is our interest. And so, more people need to find their interest, figure out what interests align with roles and industries, and do their exploration that way. And when you find that one job that is aligned with an interest that you're like, I like this, go deeper into it. And one day you'll look up and you'll realize that you're passionate about it.
Love it. Love it. I was going to ask another question to give you like a mic drop moment, but I kind of feel like that was it. But yeah, it's just such an interesting way versus how we were trying our program to think about, success and passion. So thank you so much for going deeper on that.
My
We are
pleasure.
at our time, but Dr. Edwin, do you have any final words or lasting words for the viewers who are watching, specifically for the people? I feel like I'm opening for an altar call, but the people who may feel, stuck at their job or unvalued at their job or are thinking about
Mhm.
having that tough conversation with their leader, which will decide, do I stay or do I go? But do you have any lasting words that you could leave us with?
Yeah. So for those people, I would say being miserable at work should not be your norm, and
Mm,
you deserve to enjoy what you do for a living. That's it.
But that's it. That's it. We're done, guys. Well, Dr. Scott, thank you so much for just your time and just letting us just pick your brain. This is $1 million advice that you are giving to the ThriveIN community. And so we do not take it lightly or for granted. How can we support you and do your work and find and learn more about you? But yeah, how can we support you?
Find me, Her Career Doctor. Grab a deck of affirmation cards. If you just
Love those cards.
mycareeraffirmationcards.com or my career affirmations, no cards, mycareeraffirmations.com. You can grab a deck, buy one for a friend, spread the word that way. I think just getting more women changing those stories that I talked about would be doing the work.
Perfect, perfect. Well, yes, everyone, please go follow Dr. Edwin on social media. Go to her website and support, and you will learn and you will get so many just additional gems beyond what we talked about today. You just go get into her because there's just a lot there. Well, thank you everyone for
Thank you.
watching. Thank you, Dr. Edwin, for joining us. If you all are not already, make sure to follow ThriveIN on social media. You can also visit us online, and we will see you at the next lunch break. Bye.